The Wizard of Lies, Oregon's Laurence Bennett on bringing Bernie Madoff's world to life. We were telling a psychological mystery, says Laurence Bennett of his work as production designer on the HBO movie, The Wizard of Lies. In the film, Robert De Niro plays Bernie Madoff, the once high-flying New York financial star who came crashing to earth when it was discovered Madoff had swindled clients out of $65 billion, the biggest financial fraud in U.S. history. While the facts of Madoff's crimes are established, what's less clear is why someone so well connected and successful could for years operate a scam, seemingly without remorse. It's not very easy to understand, says Bennett. I think his motives are still very enigmatic. The Madoff scandal has been widely chronicled by journalists and authors, including Diana B. Henriques, whose 2011 nonfiction account, The Wizard of Lies, Bernie Madoff and the Death of Trust, was a source for the HBO film. Bennett notes when Henriques, who appears as herself in The Wizard of Lies, was interviewing Madoff in prison, he was quick to change the subject completely when confronted with a question he didn't like or didn't want to respond to. Madoff really saw himself, weirdly, as protecting people, Bennett says. I think that's how he wanted to perceive himself. Bizarre as that rationale may sound, Bennett adds, it's not my place in designing the show to be judgmental. I have to try to get into people, if not into their heads, into their lifestyles. As the Wizard of Lies production designer, Bennett, who lives near Estacada, faced a very specific challenge. He had to create the environment around Madoff, the spaces where Madoff and his family lived and worked. Bennett and his team faced the task of, as he says, building the physical world for the narrative, and setting the stage for this big, emotional arc. We're introduced to Bernie moments before he has to confess to his wife and sons that the life they've been living has been paid for with a criminal scam, Bennett says in a phone interview. As the piece goes on, we see things more subjectively, Bennett continues, through the prism of Bernie's psyche. Once Bernie was arrested, and the news went public, the penthouse where he lived, which was originally open, and light, and in earth tones, becomes dark and claustrophobic, as Bernie and his wife, Ruth, Michelle Pfeiffer, close the curtains to shut out prying eyes and long lens cameras. It's the production designer's job, Bennett explains, to collaborate with the director and director of photography on visual storytelling. It's more than just the scenery, he says. We interface with costumes, hair and makeup, stunts and visual effects. It's a very inclusive task. The Wizard of Lies is just one of the high-profile projects on Bennett's resume. He has also worked on David Simon's The Wire, HBO limited series, Show Me a Hero, Amazon's Sneaky Pete, Paul Haggis movie In the Valley of Illa, and was Oscar nominated for The Artist. Bennett worked again with Simon on The Deuce, the upcoming HBO series looking back at circa 1970s Times Square, when it was a center for the porn industry, drugs, and mob activity. Like Show Me a Hero and The Deuce, The Wizard of Lies is a period piece, albeit one set in the recent past. Madoff was arrested in late 2008. It's essential to Bennett not to turn the past into something exaggerated or campy. I hate watching pictures when the period is foreground, Bennett says. For me, it's important to make the world accurate and believable. But it's still background of the story. The goal, Bennett says, is to make viewers comfortable with the world, and not distracted by something specific. While his work keeps him traveling for several months a year, Bennett looks forward to spending time at home on his 5 acres of property outside Estacada. It was homesteaded here in 1904, he says. Now Bennett and his wife have flower and vegetable gardens, and animals, including a dog, cat, and chickens. Bennett had traveled to Oregon to work going back to the early 1970s and, as he recalls, I just fell in love with Oregon. The California native decided to settle in Oregon in the early 1990s. Typically, I'm gone about 8 or 9 months of the year, Bennett says. This is something I really need as a balance, to slow down and relax.